Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all to the start of an ongoing retrospective about one of the biggest video game franchises of all time. One where a company known as Sega struck it big with the Blue Blur himself, keeping a series going for nearly 30 years. And so, we shall start at the beginning. This is a classic Sonic retrospective. Welcome everybody, my name is Aaron the Wolf, and today marks the beginning of the Sonic the Hedgehog retrospective. In this ongoing series, I take a look back at the Sonic series in its entirety to decide for myself what will be cherished for generations and what will be forgotten in time. Over the course of a few years, we'll be looking at everything the series has to offer, from the games, the TV shows, the comics, and even the movies. I will not rest until every piece of Sonic media has been looked at and reviewed in detail. And what better place to start than the origin of the series, the original trilogy, and Knuckles on a Sega Genesis. For this video, we'll be taking a look at Sonic the Hedgehog and Sonic the Hedgehog 2 respectively. Now, I'm gonna make something perfectly clear right now. The purpose of these first two videos is not to go over the history of the Sonic series at this point in time. There are plenty of other videos that you can watch that have already done that, not to mention I already talked about it a bit and why Sonic is awesome. The purpose of these first two videos is to answer one simple question. How well does Sonic 1, 2, CD, and 3 and Knuckles hold up by today's standards? Not how good they were 30 years ago. So sit back, relax, and let us discuss the beginning in a way that hopefully won't get anyone mad at me. Yeah, I know that's an unrealistic goal, but then again, this is a series about a blue vermin jumping through robots from a talking egg. Realism isn't exactly the series' strong suit. With that said, I'm Aaron the Wolf, and this is a classic Sonic retrospective, Part 1. Alright, so when it comes to the first Sonic game ever made, I think it holds up very well. Sonic 1 to me is similar to my feelings about Mario 1 on NES. Sure, it's the first of its kind, and other games have paved the way for the series, but both Mario and Sonic 1 are both still incredibly fun to go back to despite the limitations. So what is it about Sonic 1 that I like? Well, let's go over the big points. Right off the bat, I just love how this game's level design is structured. Every level feels like you could beat it just fine going in only one direction, but if you choose to explore your surroundings a bit, you can also find hidden goodies in the stages, whether they be extra rings or shields. This game walks that very fine line between linear and non-linear, which is not an easy thing to pull off, and Sonic 1 for the most part succeeds in that aspect very well. As far as the controls are concerned, yeah, it's a bit dated by today's standards, and even Sonic CD has better controls than this game does, but they still get the job done wonderfully. It never feels like your movement speed is either too heavy or too light. It's the right balance for a game about going fast. But as I said in the past, Sonic is more than a fast game. It's a fast platformer. And this is admittedly where it kind of fumbles, because one of my biggest gripes with Sonic 1 as a whole is that the platforming can be very hit or miss. A good portion of the game is fun, fast-paced platforming, while other stages like Marble Zone and Labyrinth Zone have platforming segments that bring the game down to a slog and can possibly drag out the stage to 4 minutes or more. Keep in mind, a majority of the stages in this game can be beaten in a minute and a half or 2 minutes, assuming you're not going for the Chaos Emeralds. So the fact that we have to sit through singular levels that are nearly twice as long makes replaying this game a bit of a chore. Case in point, Labyrinth Zone is easily the worst zone in the game for how much it brings the game down to a giant slog, because of you constantly needing to stop for air, and it just breaks the flow of the game. And speaking of the Chaos Emeralds, which can be found in the special stages are without a doubt the worst part of the whole game. First off, to even get into the special stages anyway, you have to reach the end with at least 50 rings on hand. This doesn't sound all that bad, but when you consider that some stages drag on longer than they need to, especially in Marble Zone's case, you're very easily susceptible to getting hit from something off screen and thus losing all your rings. that would be bad enough, but to top it all off, the special stages themselves feel like that they were designed by stoners. In these stages, you have to guide Sonic to an end area to grab the emerald. Alright, what's wrong here? One thing. The controls. The only thing Sonic can do in these stages is jump, as the entire stage around you is moving, where there are also buttons you can hit that can reverse, speed up, or slow down the stage, all while there are dead zones that'll kick you out of the stage with no option to try again, which are hard to avoid seeing as they can be anywhere in the stage and you can't see them until it's too late. Needless to say, these special stages are a mess. And what do you get for collecting all of the special stages at the end of the game? A slightly alternate version of the ending with flowers. Wow, that was so worth 6 frustrating stages. Not even joking, Super Sonic wasn't even a thing in the series until Sonic 2 came along. So even if you did want to finish all the special stages, why would you? Just don't bother, because the reward just isn't worth the frustration whatsoever. And the final issue I have with this game is the fact that when you get a game over, you're forced to start the whole game all over again unless you have a continue. This is a design choice I do not think holds up at all nowadays, especially considering a lot of Genesis games were like this. Yes, I am aware that Mario 1 also kicked you back to the beginning if you got a game over as well, but the thing is, that game was the first of its kind, and you could beat the entire game in 5 minutes if you wanted to, so the lack of continues is a lot more forgivable because of that. But in Sonic 1, it's incredibly infuriating to lose almost an hour's worth of progress by having to start all over again. Hell, Mario 3, which came out 1 year prior, at least had the decency to have unlimited continues in case you ran out of lives. So I don't understand why Sonic 1 couldn't have done the same. Okay, that's enough about the negatives. Let's go over some positives real quick. Well, for one thing, the soundtrack for the first game is very well done. It's memorable and without a doubt, very iconic. For better or worse. Also, the graphics are fantastic for a game released in 1999, especially for Sonic's first game. And with that, Sonic the Hedgehog is a pretty decent start for the series, and one game that I feel is pretty underrated in the Sonic community. Now, granted, I'd much rather replay something like Super Mario World a lot more than Sonic 1, but Sonic 1 does its job quite well introducing the world to the blue blur. Definitely a lot better than the second game in my opinion. Here we go. So, I'm just gonna lay it out. I personally think that Sonic 2 is probably the most overhyped Sonic game ever. Yes, I know that so many people consider this their favorite Sonic game, let alone one of the best games ever made. Well, I respectfully don't agree. If you love this game, good on you. I just personally think that this is my least favorite game from the original trilogy. Now, I want to make it clear that I don't think at all that Sonic 2 is a bad game by any means. It's just my least favorite. So to prove that I don't hate this game, let me go over the things this game does really well. The soundtrack is without a doubt my favorite from the original trilogy. While Sonic 3 and Knuckles and CD have some great tunes to listen to, Sonic 2 takes the cake for best soundtrack for me since almost every song in the game is catchy, upbeat, and is arguably some of the best Genesis music ever composed. So I'll definitely give Sonic 2 fans that. The graphics are also a significant improvement from the last game, even if it is kind of minor. Every sprite in this game just has a much better sense of art direction than Sonic 1 did. The control is also much better than Sonic 1, with the introduction of Sonic's trademark spin dash to make ramps and other badniks a complete joke. If there's anything Sonic 2 has over the original, it's a more versatile moveset. And lastly, Tails, for the most part, is a great inclusion to the gameplay, as not only is he a nice change of pace for the series, but also can get some cheeky hits in during the Robotnik boss fights. And with that, let's get into the negatives. Right away, just like Sonic 1, if you get a game over and have no continues, you have to play through the whole game all over again. By this point in time, Super Mario World was out, which had a save feature, so frankly, there's once again no excuse to not have unlimited continues. Moving on, you remember how I praised Sonic 1 for having a good balance of linear and non-linear level design? Well, Sonic 2 seems to favor the non-linear side of the spectrum. Now, that wouldn't be so bad if it were for the fact that Sonic 2 takes it one step too far by having several instances where you're hit by something you can't see coming until it's too late. And frankly, it happens more than I would like. This doesn't sound too bad at first, but it's a big factor in why I hate the special stages even more than Sonic 1. Unlike Sonic 1, if you have 50 rings, you can access the special stages by reaching a checkpoint. This system is problematic, since you likely either won't have enough rings when you reach one, or did, but then you were hit by something off screen and you had no time to react to it. Oh, it's not that bad, right? Well, it wouldn't be if it weren't for the fact that the classic Sonic games keep Sonic's sprite in the dead center of the screen at all times. Think about any other 2D platformer at the time. Most of them would put the character you're playing as on the left of the screen, so you have a better chance to avoid obstacles. Not in Sonic, however, since you can only see what's close to you and thus have less breathing room for evasive maneuvers. That would be bad enough, but the special stages themselves are terrible. I'm sorry, but they really are. What was once impressive graphics for the time, nowadays the 3D perspective just makes these special stages god-awful. The idea is to run through a linear set of half-pipes collecting rings to progress the stage, while also avoiding the many bombs in your way. Simple, right? Wrong! Because of how dated these graphics are, it's nearly impossible to reliably see the rings or the bombs coming, meaning you're more than likely to either miss the rings or hit a lot of bombs. And if you don't have enough rings by a certain point in the stage, you are kicked out with no option to try again. And if you decide to bring Tails along with you, you could just take your dreams of unlocking Super Sonic and flush them down the drain. Tails in the special stages is nothing more than a detriment to you, since he reacts to your movements like half a second late, meaning that if you don't hit the bombs, Tails absolutely will. And to top it all off, bringing Tails to the special stages increases your ring requirement, making the special stages even more difficult than they should be. And even if you decide to play the game with just Sonic, the frustration you have to go through to get Super Sonic is just not worth it. And the funny thing is, the special stages aren't even my biggest problem with the game. No, that title belongs to the final boss, the frickin' Death Egg Robot. Let me make it clear right here and now. The Death Egg Robot is easily the worst final boss I've ever fought. Hands down, nothing will ever top it. Why? Well, let me just explain. Right off the bat, you are given no rings whatsoever for the entire fight. I can't think of any reason to not give you rings during the final boss at all, other than to artificially make the boss harder than it really is. Second, there is a short mini-boss that you have to face before the real final boss, which is little more than a distraction at best. Third, the Death Egg Robot itself has spike hands that is placed in front of the only weak spot, meaning you have to wait around for him to either bend over so you can jump into him, or possibly risk a life when he attacks you with them, which usually isn't worth it. Fourth, his health pool is ridiculous. Every other Eggman boss fight in this game only takes 8 hits to take down, but the Death Egg Robot, however, takes 12 hits. 12 hits! Fifth, if you die during this boss fight, you have to beat the mini-boss again, which wouldn't be so bad if you had rings during the boss fight! And before you shout at me, yes, I am aware the final boss of Sonic 1 didn't have rings either, but the difference is that boss was designed in a way which you didn't need rings to beat. You just had to be smart about your positioning to win. With this piece of junk, since the only means of destroying it are covered with a hazard that will kill you instantly without rings, then why are there no rings whatsoever? And finally, if you have no idea how to beat this boss, it's practically unbeatable. But if you do know what to do, it drags the entire boss to what feels like 20 minutes, making it not only one of the most frustrating final bosses ever created, but also one of the most boring ones as well. In short, the Death Egg Robot can go self-destruct, toss itself into a landfill, and never come back in the series again. Oh, wait a minute! So yeah, after all that ranting, it's easy for you to assume that I hate this game. But I don't. I still think that Sonic 2 as a whole still holds up decently, and it's not even the hardest platformer on the Genesis by any means. It's got great visuals, a great soundtrack, and the game itself can be legitimately fun sometimes. I just personally don't agree with the notion that Sonic 2 is the best game ever made, when it has this many problems. In fact, I'd rather play Sonic 1 again than 2 by a landslide. Sure, Sonic 1 is more dated than 2, but at least it's a more focused game with level design that doesn't always feel like it's just trying to hit you with something off screen. Most of the time. As far as both of these games are concerned, although they're great, they're not what I think of when I think Sonic games. Granted, I am more of a fan of games like Colors, Generations, and Unleashed, so maybe I'm not the best one to judge, but as someone who's been a Sonic fan for over 10 years, I feel like I have some authority to state how I feel about the series' roots. In short, if you want to experience how the series started, I'd say go for it, just so you could see what it was like in the beginning. In fact, I'd recommend you pick up the mobile phone remakes instead. Now you may be thinking, ew, a mobile version? What is it, filled with microtransactions or something? Nope, they're just the best versions of Sonic 1 and 2 money can buy, including 1080p 60 FPS performance, the spin dash in Sonic 1, major graphical improvements to the special stages, a time attack mode, unlockable characters, and even an option to change the box art to different regions. There's just something for everyone in these mobile ports. So in short, Sonic 1 and 2, while they definitely have flawed design by today's standards, still hold up pretty well for their simple yet complex gameplay. Just note that if you want to start the series sometime soon, these games are probably not your best bet, as they are not very beginner friendly. And with that, tune in next time when we take a look at Sonic CD and 3 and Knuckles to see how much they improved on the Sonic formula. With that, I'm Aaron the Wolf, and I'll see you all next time. Stay strong and live life.